Jenna, can we test your audio?
Hi there.
Hi, thank you. Chris?
Yep, can hear everyone. Can you hear me?
Thank you. We've spoken with Sal already. Mike, can you hear us?
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Morning all. We're ready to call to order. Call this meeting to order, Committee of the Whole. And the first item is the approval of the agenda. Moved by Director Weed, good morning.
Second.
By Director Richmond, thank you. Regional Moment Area A, welcome to Sal de Mer. Please proceed. And welcome Claire Dewar.
Thank you. I was going to do a presentation on Minter Communications, but since the two reservoirs in Area A were drained for some needed investigative work, mind and decided to do a presentation on Road 40 and the reservoirs. And I hadn't seen that reply back from the ministry, Rob Fleming, on our Road 40 infrastructure request that we submitted to them. So it's interesting that this has transpired. Currently, I'm also I have the Lillooet Lytton RCMP command. Just general information on all the road fatalities on Road 40. So that moving forward, we have some data. Well, I think we can go to the next slide, please. This is a picture I took in the winter of where the Bridge River flows into the Fraser River. And I took it right from the bridge. And pre-contact, the Statlium had a pole bridge there, just made out of log poles. And that's the way the First Nations used to do river crossings like this. This is also an unbelievable salmon fishing spot for them, harvesting. And if you've never been there, while the salmon are running and they're able to fish, it's an incredible sight for sure. I've also gone to Chief Michelle Edwards, who's also chair of the Lillooet Travel Council, And she's actually she's got a picture or a sketch of that original pole bridge before contact. So it'll be interesting to see it once I get it, and I'll share it with you. Next picture, please. You can see the Bridge River down below and where the road goes along the hillside there. At that corner, where the road goes around the corner there, was where a nurse that was going to Seton-Chalath, doing a community service there, she went off the road and ended up in the river, unfortunately, and that was one of the fatalities. Next picture, please. This area here is by the Yellowcombe River, and it's actually called the Shooting Gallery. This one I took off of Facebook, and the individual that took the picture actually went and moved rocks, which is very dangerous to do. Shortly after that, I did a Facebook post on that whole concept of, you know, make sure that you're not in the zone of rocks coming down. Just past this is where a big boulder came down. A cab of a tractor trailer. The individual was seriously hurt, and it took road rescue to come out and cut him out. That was about 3 years ago now. Next slide, please. This is a picture just past where the nurse went off the road. So you can see it. I took these pictures some of these pictures in the wintertime a couple of years ago. Next slide, please. I just want to comment that just past that shooting gallery, the area A starts. So area B was those pictures prior to. So area A is in this. The boulder that you see there was about 8 foot by 8 foot. It actually came from the cliff on the left-hand side of the river. And they eventually jackhammered it into pieces. Next picture, please. This is that same area, just looking back. And you can see the rock overhang here. Going back to the early 70s, that overhang went basically right across the road. And that's how it was built. But if you drive that road and you look at that rock that's there, it is, you look at it and you think, holy geez, how is it staying up? Over the years, it's all cracked and ready to come down. Next picture, please. It's interesting. Area A goes right to the top of Mission Mountain Road, and this is on the south side of the Carpenter Reservoir. And you can see the First Nations have moved the people that were there, but the First Nations travel this road daily from Seton Portage to Lillooet. And I follow a number of Facebook groups, and they've got issues also. That road is another road that was part of that infrastructure program that we asked for. Next picture, please. This is part of the, when we had the avalanches this year, road was closed 2 or 3, 4 times for shorter periods of time. But when we had the major avalanche event, which was over 160 avalanches in the area, and most of them were on the Carpenter Reservoir side of the of Road 40. Next picture, please. Just another example of it. There's lots of these. Next picture, please. Next picture, please. The slope especially on many sections of Carpenter Reservoir are quite steep, and there's debris comes down, there's mud flows, there's trees come down, rock slides. When there's a major weather event, this road really gets hammered with stuff coming down onto the road, and you're picking and choosing your way through the rocks sometimes. Next slide. You can see the slope on the left-hand side, and these are all avalanche paths. There's so many avalanche paths along this road. There was one year we were living in Williams Lake. We came down, and it was midnight because I was doing a late shift when I was working, and we actually went through some of the smaller avalanches. By the time we got to Goldbridge, they were just putting the gates down to close the road. Next slide, please. You can see more of the slope the way it is there. Next slide. Next slide, please. And this picture kind of shows the reservoir is frozen right there, so the water is frozen. But you can see what the terrain is like when you're driving it, especially in weather events. Any mistake driving, you're into the reservoir. I personally know of a number of fatalities that have occurred that have gone into the reservoir, and a number of my friends and their families have gone into that reservoir. When I show the pictures of the empty reservoir, you'll see how deep it is in sections, and it's critical. And one of my requests this year was all the reflectors on the side of the road, the delineators that actually tell you where the side of the road are, were totally wiped out with all these avalanches, and they're still not replaced. And one of the latest fatalities, where the two people went off the road and into the reservoir that passed away, they were actually, it was almost like distracted driving, because there's a section there where the big orange sheep come down, and they stopped to look at the big orange sheep, but they went too far and they ended up in the reservoir. And there was one of the delineators laying on the ground that was missing there. And that whole section, there was maybe one or two delineators still up. And they still haven't got that done yet. Very frustrating. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide. That just shot up towards one of these slide areas. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide. While this event, when this event happened, they had two Dawson Road Maintenance plow trucks out on the road. They actually got in between slides and they couldn't get out. The avalanche tech was in the helicopter, and he saw them down below, and he came down and picked them both up and took them back to Goldbridge. Next slide. Next slide. A different avalanche or slide area. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. This is the area that the fatality that me and my wife Debbie came upon. where a boulder landed on off of this hillside onto the truck, and it was not a very good scene to be at. But you can see the trees that are burnt above it. That was from the Hell Creek fire in 2009, and they're all getting to the point of falling over. And the debris that was on the road that I witnessed, there was one of those trees was down there. And it's going to be a major issue because they're at the time, at about this time, that about 10 years after, 12 years after the fire, that they're all going to start falling. So the roots rot and they just come down. So that's one of the requests that we made to Maudie, was to, part of the safety improvement program, is to look at these trees and see what can be done, because they're going to continually come down. Next slide, please. Next slide. So they've lowered, first they lowered the Down Reservoir, and once they did all their investigative work on it, they drained the Carpenter Reservoir. This is the Carpenter Reservoir, and that infrastructure there was when they were actually building it, that you see down below. So they had to do a little bit of maintenance on some of the intakes on this reservoir. Next slide. This is a picture of the bridge, a bridge across the Bridge River, and you can see the roadway that led up to it. So this is prior to them building the reservoir and flooding it. Next picture. And this is looking up the valley. Next picture. One of the things that prior to them doing this, when the mine opened up in the 30s, the road was down here on the valley bottom, and when they did all this work, they put the road up on the hillside, which has caused a lot of issues over the years. And they've done a lot of improvements on it. I've witnessed it all, but they still need to do a lot more work on it, on the road. Next slide. Next slide. This is a section of the old road. You can see it. Next slide. Back in those days, the only way into the valley was, in the 30s and 40s, was up and over Mission Mountain, and the equipment for the mines and the towns all came in on rail cars, and then they went up and over Mission Mountain and along the valley bottom to it. And there was a cattle ranch that supplied meat, and there were also agriculture, like farms that had produce and everything in the valley. And if you look at some of the pictures coming up, and just look at the Pemberton Valley, the Pemberton Meadows, and this valley, and you'll see that they're very similar. And this is low enough on the north, on the south-facing slope on the right. It is loaded with ponderosa pines, which tells you how hot it actually gets there. And what an incredible place to have agriculture that we literally don't have very many areas now, because they basically took it away with this reservoir. And when it comes to that NDIT built funding and all that funding, just imagine where we would be if these reservoirs weren't in here, what the valley would be like. The Statlium, they use this valley and they called it the land of plenty, because there was Chinook salmon, there were moose, deer, everything that they ever wanted. They had trails. They had one over Mission Mountain that most of it's gone because of the road. And they had another one up towards Tyax Creek that went down right down into this valley, closer to Goldbridge. And they had another trail that went, the one that to Truax Creek actually went up Whitecap Creek area up onto the glaciers. One went to Tyax Creek down into this valley, and the other one went into the Braylorn area. Next image, please. Next image. This is the Down Reservoir. I took this picture. I had to go to Seton Portage for an event, and I took this picture. But prior to that, it was actually lower. This reservoir, they're going to do a major improvement program on it that you've probably seen in some of the BC Hydro's presentations. It's originally they said it was around 350 million. It's now they're looking at anywhere from 600 million to $1 billion project. And they had to lower it. It was quite a bit lower than this. They had to do a bunch of drilling at the base of it and do a bunch of other work on it, just so that they can finalize their plans. It's going to be a major project. They plan to do it, the major aspect of it, especially the lower sections during the winter, in the 5-month period where they can lower it right down, and 300 people, 300 workers at a time in those 5-month stints. And it'll be a multiple year project. So it's going to be a big impact to our valley when they do this project. Next picture, please. This is a picture of the Carpenter Reservoir when the water level is up. You can see the difference. But underneath that is super fertile land. Next picture. This is a picture of the Down Reservoir when it was full. And in the background of Mount Truax and the gully that you see in behind there, that's the Hurley River on the way up to Braylorn. You can see the road that goes up to Braylorn. The last, quite a few years now, maybe we're up to about 6 or 7 years, BC Hydro, because of the seismic issues that they got on this reservoir, that's what the improvement project's all about. They only kept it at about 50% full, but the upgrade will take it back up to full water level. But they've made an agreement with the Statlium that they'll only do that if needed, and they'll keep it down, because at the far end of the reservoir is a grizzly bear habitat. It's actually a grizzly bear park now, and they want to keep the native plants and everything that are growing back there active. So they'll just only take it up to full height if they need to. Next slide, please. I've done 2 full plane trips to the Bridge Glacier. This is the Bridge Glacier, and you could actually land on the lake at the foot of the glacier. And this picture was taken in 2014. Next slide, please. This is in 2020, so 6 years later, and it had receded a considerable amount already. And if you look at the side hill, you can see where the glacier used to be. This is one of the fastest receding glaciers in BC. And you can see the difference. That is a lot of ice that has receded. And it's almost at the point now that the foot of the glacier is going to be on land and not into the lake. So huge impact. But I discussed that with Hydro when they were one of their original meetings on the Down Reservoir, and they said that, we're still going to get the rain, we're still going to get all that, so they're moving ahead to get it back up to full height through their improvement program. And next slide. So any questions or comments or?
Thank you, Director Demare. Are there comments or questions? The dramatic part of the world. I know it well too.
Chair, can you hear me? It's Russell.
Yes, we can. Morning, Director Mack.
Hi. Yeah, very interesting slides, Sal. But, you know, the farmland and all that, that valley was such a productive place. And, you know, I've had my concerns with the Site C Dam area. They're flooding the same thing up there, some of the most beautiful farmland, you know, in North America, but they just don't seem to get it. They do it over and over and over again. And once it's flooded, it's gone. Wildlife habitat, everything. Yeah, it's very sad. But anyways, my comments, great pictures. So thanks.
Yeah, the one thing I didn't mention was that when they built this system, they tunneled through the mountain, and they got 8-foot diameter pipes that come out the far side that go down the hill into Seton Portage, where the power generating stations are. There's one power generator at the Down Reservoir on that dam, but the issue is with the salmon. They didn't put any ladders in because some of the salmon would go down the pipes. So it's still a huge issue for the Statlium. And a number of years ago, we had a major snowfall event and rain event, and they had to let the water go over the Terzaghi Dam, and it was amazing. It almost washed out that road where that canyon is. The spray from the overflow was a mile down the canyon, and it took out all the spawning grounds that were left for the salmon downstream. So they made an agreement eventually that they did all the spawning grounds again. Hydro had to go in and build them back up, and they had to allow X amount of water out all the time so that the salmon there could at least come back up to that area. And it was interesting. I was one of the first people to see a grizzly bear in that lower, just past the Terzaghi Dam on the bridge. And I got pictures and videos of it. It was the first one seen in about 15 years. And that was because of the salmon that were back into that part of the river. But it's a major issue, and even in Seton Lake, with the way that they got the canal and so on and so forth, trying to get salmon to come up into Seton Lake up to, and all the way up to Darcy. But we don't have any salmon anymore in past that Terzaghi Dam, unfortunately. Thank you.
Thank you. The next thing we are to do here is move into the committee of the whole closed meeting. Motion by Director Stoner.
Thanks, and I just wanted to streamline the reasons why we're going into closed.
Okay.
It's just I and K, please. Just for when we pass that motion, it will just be those two subsections.
So the receipt of advice is subject to solicitor client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. And K, negotiations and related proposed provision of a municipal service. They're at the preliminary stages, and that in the view the council could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were held in public. So we have a motion by Director Stoner, seconded by, I think, Director Rainbow to go into closed. So moved.
And we will stop the live streaming.